Welcome to the third in our webinar series in the Meridian University Integral MBA in Creative Enterprise Operations Management course this fall quarter 2015. And really excited tonight to have Edward West in our speaking in our series on transforming enterprise operations. We're going to have a really interesting chat this evening with him. I've had a little preview of that. As we usually do, we will have some brief introductions from everyone. And then the introduction from Edward about his work and that type of thing, and then we'll just launch into it. Okay. So Carmen, if you would start us off, obviously your name is Carmen Silva. Where are you, and what brings you to this topic? What inspired you to show up tonight?
Yeah, hi, I'm Carmen. I'm in Marin. I also office out of Impact Hub, and I know Edward from there, Meridian from there. Very interested in how we can be more effective in our social causes through collaboration and collective impact. And so this whole, I'm not quite sure how Edward is going to weave this, but I was very curious and thought I would participate.
Great, thank you for coming tonight. And Claudia, how about you?
Hello, so my name is Claudia. I'm calling from Sonoma County, a small town called Kenwood, and I'm one of NICAR's students. So I'm in my second year for the Integral MBA for Creative Enterprises as Meridian. And my background is, so I'm an artist, I'm a filmmaker, and there's always a lot of collaboration. And I'm very curious about this particular seminar because I've been using Hylo a little bit, and I see more people joining, and I think collaboration is actually the essence of our future work. And since I have a technology background, I'm really excited about to learn more about this.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So Edward, on to you. Thanks again for being so willing to
you're welcome.
Yeah, to come tonight and spend some time with us. And first of all, I'd love for you to share a little bit about your background and what brought you to collaboration.
Well, the essence of it, Nika, when I was in college, I studied engineering and product design, and what I was trying to figure out how to do at that time was build technology that made things better. And when I was in school, I started to work on like electric vehicles and solar powered cars and things like that, because that to me was the essence of how do you make the world a better place? Well, you stop using fossil fuels, right? And seemed pretty straightforward. And I kind of took that all the way to its logical extent in a certain sense, where I worked in engineering, and then I started my own electric vehicle company called Mission Motors in 2005. And we created, at that time, the world's first electric motorcycles that were capable of being used on highways, and we set a bunch of world records for fastest electric motorcycle, and built motorcycles for Honda, for Harley Davidson, for some other Japanese company called Mugen, and built really the first electric motorcycle and electric powertrain company that was building these very small compact drives, and that was pretty cool. And part of it was what I got really interested in is not just the technology, but how is it that technology can actually influence culture and change perspectives? Because I've always also been studying since I was since 2000, the year 2000 or so. I was a student of Ken Wilber's work. And fascinated by the sort of stages of evolutionary culture change, and how does that work? And so I got kind of captivated by the idea that infrastructure could drive change. So I was working on this electric vehicle thing, both because of the technology itself, and if we could convince motorcycle racers, was my idea at the time, the sort of the coolest, blue orange meme kind of intense folks, that that electric vehicles were the best things out there and could beat their gas motorcycles, then we'd really make a shift. And so that was kind of the strategy. And along the way, I started to recognize that there were some really interesting leverage points that could be focused on for infrastructure, for culture change, that didn't look like electric vehicle technology. And when we started to, I started to realize that that the allocation of resources in the world was a much, and sort of organizational structure itself were much more interesting challenges to start to focus on than kind of changing the fuel that you're putting in the tank. It seemed like a much more interesting, higher leverage point for creating a more vibrant, healthy, harmonious culture. Mm-hmm. And so I started trying to think a little bit about, well, what are the problems here? And there's this sort of sense of scarcity and people competing for resources, whether that's money for investment or whether that is kind of care or attention for some kind of interest that someone has. And there's all, not necessarily being super clear, but there's all of these layers of in our beings of a sense of challenge and scarcity and competition. Mm-hmm. And what would we do to sort of challenge that and create new frameworks and new understandings and new culture and new experiences that would give people the sense that they actually lived in a collaborative, creative, abundant world, and sort of it started to think about that from a kind of a product design perspective. If I were going to create a product that created infrastructure that delivered that, what would that look like? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what led me to collaboration. Essentially, was recognizing the sort of inherent unity of things and the experience of discord, which seems artificial compared to a possible harmony that we could achieve in society if we learn to work together in a different way, as opposed to kind of competing with each other and benefiting ourselves at the expense of others in certain circumstances, even knowingly. Mm-hmm. So that was the kind of the path, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it sounds like the focus on shifting belief and behavior, and experience.
Yeah.
Because as we know, that when people have an embodied, really deep experience of something, then their values can shift, their beliefs begin to shift, their whole worldview essentially is able to be transformed. So is that, I'm seeing the connection now between then co-founding the Impact Hub and doing Hylo also.
Yeah, because I got as I said, I think I got really interested in that sort of intersection of, I can talk about quadrants. People know what that is here. The sort of...
Students do. How about you, Carmen? Integral quadrants?
No.
Okay. Don't worry about it. I got very interested. Oh, there's another person joining.
Yes. Welcome, Jamie. We're going to keep going.
Okay. I got very interested in how our infrastructures actually influence our interiors and our culture. And so Impact Hub, to me, is a type of infrastructure. In this case, it's a co-working space and community center, but that actually changes people's experience of themselves and of community. And so actually something as simple as a building can actually make a profound impact on those things. And that was kind of how that was an interesting leverage point for creating a kind of a place in Oakland with an intention of inviting people's full selves. They're human, they're professional, they're social, they're collaborative, they're creative, they're their highest and most mundane selves all together into community. So to sort of reinforce the idea that we're all of us matters, and together we can do more than we can do on our own. And so that's the sort of my version of the intention of Oakland Hub, and to bring that to a community that hasn't always had everything be easy for them in Oakland.
Mm-hmm. And creating it, we had a discussion with Lisa Chacon not long ago. Yes,
I'm a big fan of Lisa Chacon.
Yes, and in this operation series, she was our first webinar, and so I'm reminded in listening to you of her comment about how the practice of integral theory needed a place.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Like, to have that space to be in, to experiment with, and prototype, and see what was going on, and then adjust, adapt, bring new influences in, and that type of thing, which we've seen in the first years of Impact Hub Oakland. And also the especially in the first year, there were so many tours and so many people like gawking in the front windows and then coming in, that you could see immediately the ripple effect also. That's right. That makes people curious, and suddenly they're inside the doors and they're having an experience, even if they don't become members.
Yeah.
The sense of possibility.
Yep. Yeah. And so that was kind of a certain type of infrastructure, and then the concept of how do we create a kind of software infrastructure, an online infrastructure that could give people the experience of being part of an abundant collaborative community online that would scale beyond the walls of Impact Hub Oakland. And that was kind of where the concept for Hylo began. Mm-hmm. There's a sense that I have that everybody has some kind of vision or purpose or some kind of special gift that they're here to give in this life. And what society ought to be organized around is the sort of enabling and inviting of each person's deepest gift, and having it go to where it's needed most in an organization or in the world more broadly. Mm. And so that kind of harmony, I think, can be supported in a different way through a kind of online infrastructure. And that's what I got really excited about building with Hylo, to kind of bring together what I call the radical agency, which is that everybody has a very unique and authentic purpose, with radical communion, which is that the purpose of community is to invite people to that highest calling so that they can give that gift to the community. Mm-hmm. And so that was how that was born. What we're trying to do with Hylo, are you, Carmen and Claudia and Jamie, Are you guys, well, I'll assume nobody's heard of it because other people might watch this later. We're recording.
That's a good assumption.
Okay, so basically what Hylo is a kind of a vision for how we could use the vision or the vernacular, let's say, that's sort of the tools and the common experience of social media and social networks to help people understand who around them is part of their community, shares similar ideas or goals, who has what skills that they could share, who is working on what kind of project, and how can we actually help each other in a kind of collaborative and serendipitous way and synergistic way, so that together we can begin to do more than we know how to do alone. And with the global any-to-many technology, you can start to do these things in a more in a broader, vaster way. And so that was kind of the inclination towards the creation of Hylo.
Mm. Yeah, I've been fascinated with Hylo too. I mean, I go in and occasionally participate.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of the things that are posted. And there's such a diversity of what people are trying out there also. That I love that built into it implicitly is this mutuality.
Yeah.
So people are giving and also opening up to receive.
Yeah.
In ways that are often difficult for people. You know, that people talk about, well, you have to be generous and give and that type of thing and focus on that. But also there's opening up to be vulnerable and to say, I need something.
Yeah. And
I would love it if somebody gave it to me.
Yeah.
Is an essential practice, right?
Yeah. No, it's very interesting. It's like, we know intuitively that in our communities, we're surrounded by amazing people with amazing skills and resources and connections. But it's not always easy to see who should meet who and connect with who and what circumstance when in order to exchange what. And so the concept is if you could make something sort of simple and easy to use enough that you could have this kind of lightweight signaling system for abundances and requests, and they could start to move and flow, then that would be a very different kind of trans-organizational, silo-busting, collaborative resource sharing network. Mm-hmm. And it's our own modest start, and it's actually really beautiful what's happening. I actually think it would be fun to show people a little bit about it and do just a kind of a quick walkthrough. And then
let me give you the host baton here.
Okay.
So that you can do the screen share.
Cool. All right, I'm the host now.
Yeah.
All right.
I have the
I'll
power.
share my screen. Okay, I will show this one, and I will. Okay.
In some ways, it reminds me of like the ancient roots of just being in the village with people, mm-hmm. and really knowing what it is that that people aspire to, what might support them, what you can give, what other people are talented at, that type of thing. That it's bringing it into the 21st century version of that.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea here. So is this a good size? Is this obvious here, or should I make it smaller or something? Like, is it better if I do this?
It looks good to me. How about everybody else?
Looks good.
Okay, great. Okay. So basically, here's how Hylo works. So this is one particular community. This one happens to be Impact Hub Oakland. And here at Impact Hub Oakland, as I said, there's lots of amazing people, but you don't necessarily know what's going on or who to talk to when about what. and we thought, what would happen if we tried to embed a little bit of intentionality into social media, and begin to give people the experience of an abundant, collaborative, creative community? How would they begin to behave differently? How would their experience of the world change? And or just their community. So that's the general principle here. So on Hylo, you can do a few things. You can say just about anything you'd like. You can also offer something that you'd like to share, a kind of a gift or a skill or a resource. You can ask for something that you need. You can share an intention of something that you'd like to create and you want others to join you in, or you can share an event. Okay. And so some things that we do, it seems pretty simple so far, I would say, but some things that we do that are actually quite unique is that if I share this in a private community here, so this one is going to be visible to Impact Hub Oakland, that's great. But, I'm actually a part of lots of different communities. So you can see here, there's a bunch of different communities that I'm a part of. And I'm a little bit of an outlier because I'm a part of many of the communities. Oops, I went the wrong way there.
Well, that makes sense. You're the creator of this.
Yeah, exactly. I often joke, I don't know if people get this joke, I'm like Tom from MySpace. He was everybody's friend on MySpace, and I'm in everybody's community, essentially. And so I can actually tag multiple different communities if it's something that I think is relevant for those communities. Okay. And so what happens there is actually interesting, which is that even though each of these three communities are private communities, this will create a kind of a bridge between them where this particular conversation will be shared amongst all the members of each of these three communities so that anyone in those communities can see it. So it's a kind of a custom conversation space just for those for the people at those three places, and they can begin to connect beyond their silos across communities in a way that isn't easily done with other types of tools. Mm-hmm. And I can also choose, if I want to make it publicly visible, attach images or files with Google Drive. Okay, pretty simple. And then these posts, we call them seeds. You can comment on them. I can @tag other people, whether they're a part of this community or not. I can tag people that I share a community with, so I can start to bridge individual people into a conversation. And so then Jackie would get a notification, even if she's not part of Oakland Hub. Mm. Okay, so that's kind of fun. And you can do typical things like you can search for people. I won't go into that right now. But this community, interestingly enough, is actually part of what's called a network. So I can zoom out and see all the other communities that are part of this Impact Hub global network, so that we can actually start to facilitate resource sharing between these different communities. So as a member of this global network, I can view at a kind of a meta network level, or multiple communities. So this is Impact Hub Salt Lake, this is Impact Hub Oakland, and we can start to bridge these opportunities beyond a single community, which is pretty cool. And I'll share one more thing here. And then within a single community, you can create projects, and projects are a kind of like a list of all the things that you need to make something happen. So it kind of looks like a Kickstarter campaign, where you say, okay, if I'm going to start a community garden, I need a shovel and a bucket and a wheelbarrow, and then people can know how to support that initiative. In this case, I invited people to create a kind of a shared community skill share. And so people shared different things that they'd like to offer in order to help put on that event. And it was really a delightful event. It was fun. And then the last thing I'll say is this is a public project. So that means that even though it's in a private community, it can be like a front porch, so that people from beyond the community can see and contribute to this particular project.
Mm. So you could invite other people because it's publicly visible.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the sort of the overview here. I know that maybe is a little complex, or maybe it's simple. I don't know.
Well, it leads into the question that you and I batted back and forth, which I just love because it segues so beautifully into the operations management learning that we're doing. That question is, what does operations look like when it's coordinating resources of an entire ecosystem?
Yeah, that's right.
Company, right? So
that's right.
The Hylo is a good demonstration of a tool for that type of thing.
Yep.
But you are also, from what I understand, working on a bigger project.
Yeah, no. So this kind of I'll stop sharing the screen here and just start to share a little bit. So I'll start with the first piece is that I don't know if you guys realize there's now more contractors and freelance workers in the world than any other type of worker. Okay, and as communications, global communications, any-to-many, and IT in general gets better and better, the coordinating costs and the frictions of people collaborating across organizations or between multiple freelancers, those coordinating costs get lower and lower, so that some of the pressures, I don't know if you guys have studied COAS and the theory of the firm. So there was a guy named Ronald, or is it Roland? One of those two, COAS, and he did some studies in the 30s to figure out why is it that that businesses exist in the way that they do, and how do they grow and how do they scale. What he found is in the cases where if you can reduce transaction costs, if, for example, you walk down the hallway to the law office of your company and say, hey, I need help with this contract, and implicitly the lawyer says, okay, great, I'll work with you on that on Tuesday, and then you walk back down the hall and he works on that, and you didn't need to work on a contract between the two of you. Was he going to do this? When was he going to do it? You're all kind of working for the same organization. And so that's a reduction in the kind of transaction costs that would make it more inexpensive for a company to have a lawyer in-house, as it were. Mm-hmm. And what is interesting is that if the transaction costs for negotiating contracts or for finding the right labor or resources to do a particular job drop, then the necessity of having individuals all in the same firm reduces, and the kind of aggregate pressure that gave rise to corporations and multinationals is actually almost waning in certain contexts, because people can collectivize and organize and coalesce around certain challenges and disperse as needed. We see people have different perspectives on Airbnb. Some of them maybe think it's a bad thing, others maybe it's a good thing. I think it's, let's say for this conversation, quite an extraordinary thing, where if we consider it one of the largest hotels in the world, but they don't hardly employ anyone, right? So it's this kind of distributed collaborative entity that's enabled by pervasive information technology. And things like that, trends like that, are going to continue. And we believe even a firm like Airbnb or Uber may be a kind of a midpoint to a further a kind of conclusion of this motion of this towards more and more distributed disaggregated organizations that can't even really be considered organizations anymore. It's just the ecosystemic coordination of resources. So we start to ask the question, what does knowledge management and what does ERP and what do operations look like in a post-firm kind of world? And to my mind, it's going to look a little bit more playful and social media like, and simple and inviting for anyone to participate in, to start to kind of map the abundant resources and skills that they have around them and are able to marshal. So it becomes a kind of a distributed distributed understanding of the resources of a society that isn't owned by anyone in particular, and helps give windows into how we can aggregate those resources when necessary around certain types of initiatives. And so that's kind of the Hylo vision over the long term, is to become this a way to kind of aggregate resources and coordinate across all boundaries, essentially.
So what happens to compensation in this scenario? This is one of the things I read about. Robert Reich just wrote an editorial the other day about, in the sharing economy, he's very concerned that that the social supports that humans need are now all winding up on the backs of the workers, because we do have a predominantly independent contractor, freelance world at this point, and we have not created a social structure that supports that operational structure. So we don't have in the United States, we don't have adequate health care. We don't have we don't have a salary that people are given, or some kind of dividend or that type of thing that they can use as a platform to do this kind of abundant mutual transaction process on top of. So
that's right.
Thoughts about that?
I'll say a couple things. The first of which is some of the things coming up in Hylo over the next months will enable people to put like rewards that can be denominated in cash or different types of currencies, even mutual credit currencies, so that that resources of that kind of currency type will be able to flow in the system. That's one piece. And then the second piece is that I actually believe that to enable the sort of harmonious flowing ecosystem kind of society that I think I aspire to, I think we're going to need to uncover as a society how to create things like universal basic income. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where things need to head, because I think there's something fundamentally broken about our system, where I don't know how to say this in the most articulate ways, where individuals can really have just a terrible time. I think people can have perhaps skills that aren't understood or skills that aren't in demand, and somehow that's, or they can be sick or have other kinds of pressures that are difficult for us to imagine or contemplate, and therefore they should starve to death, or I think as a society, I think the only sort of humane answer to some of these challenges of how we actually work well together look like basically a kind of world where there's a basic living standards are part of the birthright of being human, that no being should suffer unduly in being able to just survive. That may seem fantastical, pie in the sky, or totally inappropriate to some or many, but that's where I believe things need to head. And it's not as though there's not enough resources. It's all just in how we decide collectively that we're going to allocate them. Because obviously we're fine right now. I mean, fine is a strong word because many people are suffering, but obviously there are enough resources for everybody, and I think we could do a lot better than we are about distributing them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very interesting, because I too believe that we're headed in that direction. There's a lot of people in the hubosphere, as I call it, who are aligned with that. It's what the Living the New Economy convergence next year is going to be focused on, racial equality in forming the new economy, or continuing to shape that. And so as we talk about the decline of the firm and distributed operations, the other function that the firm has is that it takes care of provisioning the laborers in it, right? So now we've taken the walls away. How do we provision the laborers of the distributed operational network in ways that are appropriate, accessible, inclusive, all of that? And a lot of people, really critique all the versions of the sharing economy as, created by the privileged for the privileged.
No, I mean, I think that's, if we're going to kind of really evolve as a society, that's the direction we're going to need to go. I'm going to be at that conference, and I'll be excited to see what the cutting edge is, and how I can help shape some of the tools that we'll use to get there.
So I'm curious about you. You had right before the webinar tonight sent me a little.
I'd love to share about that.
And because you're involved in a bigger conversation with other people also who are headed in similar directions. Before we shift, do you want to open up for some questions?
Yeah, maybe answer a couple questions that are out there. Sure. Mm-hmm.
So
maybe
Carmen, Claudia, or I'm going to assume that that's Jamie on the telephone. If you have responses or questions at this point, chime in.
Sure. I'd like to ask a question about Hylo and how you feel, like, what are some of the big lessons you've learned, some of the surprises that have happened in terms of the way you thought people would be collaborating and the way they actually are, and what kind of ship changes have you had to, initiate that have been interesting to you?
I mean, I think the thing that is exceedingly true, and more true than I necessarily realized, is how important a kind of community leadership is in enabling. I mean, I think to a certain extent, we're all kind of, as we started out, we're all monkeys, and it's kind of a monkey see, monkey do world, even in people kind of building and creating this new economy. And what has been really interesting is to see how the communities that really succeed and thrive on Hylo usually have, between 1 and 3 people who are very dedicated to helping to weave the conversations and invite people out and kind of build a kind of the culture within this sort of the new kind of infrastructure. And so learning how to to sort of lower the barrier for those folks that would be those leaders, learning how to provide them the kind of materials and videos and onboarding that they would need to know how to do that. That's kind of an ongoing process. So that's one area where we're improving. Another thing that's been really interesting is how the sort of the perceptions that people have about their community and how that influences the way they participate. So we had initially thought that co-working spaces were going to be an incredibly fertile kind of a soil for us, and that co-working people were going to get it right away. And what I learned is that the hub is actually pretty unique and in the world of co-working, because a lot of people who are working in co-working don't necessarily see themselves as sharing goals, visions, or values with the people that they're sitting next to. They're just kind of looking for a quiet place to do their work. And so people have to be kind of interested in the people that are around them. And I learned that that's not necessarily always true about people. And so a community that succeeds on Hylo usually has a sort of a kind of a shared sense of purpose, some kind of a we, and someone in the community or multiple people who are really champions of building a new kind of culture, as well as the participants in the community believing that the other people around them in their community are interesting. And when we have those three things, then we have vibrant communities. And usually when one or multiple of those are missing, it's not as much so.
Mm.
So I have it's not really a question, but a sharing, because I'm in an online learning environment. So, and I'm particularly interested in your aspect of how technology can actually influence culture or even create new culture. And so this is a lot of our inquiry right now with our MBA, because we are kind of really on a very emergent act and trying to build a culture around the new way of looking at economy. And I have been wondering, and we have our own learning experience that Nika and I and all the other students are sharing now, in terms of what works online and where an in-person meeting is actually really needed. And I wonder, just from your experience, from observing the different communities, because seeing this long list of all the communities who are using Hylo, and you just mentioned something, those who have a specific way of leadership, do you think that there is actually this momentum where we really need to meet in person? Is this an essential part of building culture, or do you believe that cultural shift and transformation can actually really happening on an exclusive online exchange base?
In my experience, there's a kind of we're still kind of embodied beings, and there's a certain kind of relationship building and trust building that happens in a kind of higher bandwidth way, like more information is transmitted much more quickly when we're in personal or in physical proximity and contact. Mm-hmm. Such that at this stage of our technology, it feels like while everything is kind of possible to do online, there are certain types of things that can happen much more efficiently or quickly if they are combined with in-person gatherings. Mm-hmm. Some of the most successful community launches on Hylo we've had, as a small example, came from me attending a meeting where the community was all together and basically doing a kind of a demo, not too sharply different from what I gave you guys, and then answering questions in person and talking to people. Mm-hmm. Creates a very, very different experience than if they watch a little video or even worse, if they just get an email that says, "Hey, join this thing."
Yeah.
And so to me, the in-person gatherings are essential. Maybe I'll use that, unless maybe Jamie has a question. I'll use that as a segue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
So I'll use that as a segue to something that's been happening that Nika kind of mentioned, which is I've been kind of envisioning. I talk about excuse me. I talk about people connecting between their different organizations or freelancers connecting. But there are really powerful things still, of course, happening in small groups of people where they're creating tools or technologies or companies or other things. Because not necessarily just to kind of be all under the same kind of legal structure, but because each of us have different skills, and together, if someone specializes in drawing the pictures, and someone specializes in writing the story, and someone specializes in running the camera, then all of a sudden you've got an animation show or whatever it is. So groups of people can create things that individuals can't create on their own. We understand that. And I got very interested in, as I got to know lots of different people kind of creating their own collaborative web software tools and mobile apps that are designed to facilitate similar things in communities, of some kind of decision making in a community, or resource sharing in a community, or a type of collaboration. And I started to think, well, what would happen if all of these organizations could come into some kind of alliance together to consciously begin to build tools that were cognizant of the other tools? So that if I have a group on Hylo, then that group on Hylo can evoke, like, let's say, a tool called Lumio, that's a collaborative decision-making tool. A Hylo community could say, oh, we want to make a decision now. And then all of a sudden, they would have this module that came from a different piece of software that would help them do that. Or they could say, oh, we have $5,000 that we got in this crowdfunding campaign, and we need to figure out how to spend it. And then they could invoke a kind of a tool called co-budget, which would enable them to then allocate those resources democratically in their network. And so we brought together in person a group of 35 people, that many of whom sort of have their own collaborative software platform, and laid out a vision for this. And that meeting, which was in person, was absolutely essential for kind of trust and momentum building. And people understood, oh, that's who that person is. Okay, I can see in their eyes, I can feel comfortable with them. And now when I send them an email, I'm not sending it to an email address, I'm sending it to someone I know. And I have a sense of how they might respond. And so this kind of organizational ecosystem to me became very interesting, and is something that Hylo is helping to kind of champion and steward this broader collaborative network and ecosystem of tools. And so then the operations challenge has become very interesting around how not only does one organization take care of resources, but how do multiple organizations take care of each other in trying to create something together, some of which falls kind of in between each of their individual initiatives. And so right now we're creating a what's going to be called the Collaborative Technology Consortium, which is going to sort of set standards that people who are adherents of the global or the Collaborative Technology Alliance will be party to. So there's a consortium that's going to create sort of protocols and ideas, and then people who are part of the alliance adhere to those rules. But the consortium is actually going to raise money through a crowdfunding campaign and charitable donations to also fund fellowships for people who are working in the middle, essentially. So someone who's working on a technology that creates a connection between two organizations will be a collaborative technology consortium fellow. And she'll be able to have the resources she needs to do her work, even though it falls outside of any of the direct responsibilities of any of the one organization, any single organization. So that is a fascinating challenge on multiple levels, kind of social and economic and structural, infrastructural, to figure out how to really coordinate this kind of thing to create this harmony across all of these tools and goals and agendas and individuals. Oh, I think you're muted, Claudia.
Yeah, well, that sounds very fascinating. Well,
yeah.
You quoted the example of an animation company, and of course, I'm very familiar with the in and outs of weaving different technology together, because this is actually the essence of my domain is visual effects. So this is.
Oh yeah, okay. Maybe I was intuiting that. Who knows? Yeah.
Do and. I think the approach that you are taking is bringing the creators of these applications together.
Yeah.
Creating a joint vision is really key, because only then you can really create the web between the individual components.
That's right.
And I think from a cooperational, collaborative perspective, I think defining the web and what is the membrane that connects everything is really important, and it seems that you're kind of hitting the spot right there. Mm-hmm. But very complex. Yeah. And
no, it's not simple.
And very complex. And the big problem with technology is, of course, that the investment for research and development often over exceeds, any revenue stream in the short term, and to carry that through with companies who may actually don't have the stability to really even withstand that. That's actually very tricky. Yeah.
I agree.
But well, it sounds amazing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's funny the situations I get myself into. But this is definitely my most complex challenge. If it's like to balance the sort of the social dynamics of it are fascinating alone, and then the organizational and operational dynamics are also fascinating, and then the sort of the way the resources flow and everything. It's a kind of a. And then, of course, technologically, it's no simple thing either. So it's a good grand challenge for the moment for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I immediately think of is that you're doing this in the technology domain, and then really you're prototyping something that can be used in other domains. I mean, I was thinking like. Education or human services, for example, where people have been trying for a very long time to have integrated services, for example, integrated human services in communities and things like that. And they run into the walls of their organizations all the time, and then eventually they get tired of banging their heads against the walls, and it just collapses. And we've heard of that over and over again. So it sounds like what you're getting into here is potentially applicable as that type of thing too.
Yeah. So we're trying to prototype the culture and the tools required for it, and the existence of those tools will then actually be applicable infrastructure to almost every field. So it's a kind of a bootstrapping process, where if we can figure out how to use these tools and these principles to build ourselves this ecosystem for creating these tools, then the tools themselves will become of use for everybody. And so it's a kind of a cute little.
The tools and the experience of creating the cultural container that helped you succeed in creating those tools collaboratively also. So that's really fascinating. So is there like one, we've been talking sort of generally about and conceptually, but is there one specific challenge that came up for you all as a group that you were just really inspired, like we got through that and it was really inspirational about how we got through that? Anything, story that you would like to share about something like that?
I mean, I think for me, the thing that I think I was most inspired by was getting people to believe that this was necessary and possible. I think people came to the gathering somewhere between lukewarm, curious, and cautiously optimistic. And there was a kind of a cultural weaving that took place that left people with a kind of a glimmer of hope that something different was actually possible here. And to me, that was the big win. As in a certain sense, I believe that if we do what we're trying to do, it is relatively unique in terms of what people have done before, and so yeah. I mean, we'll see. And to have people believe that it's possible is the first step, and that was a huge win for me.
So how long has the group been going?
I've been laying groundwork for it to come together for about a year and a half, and we only met in October, because it took a lot of relationship building one-on-one and traveling, flying all over the country and all over the world to get people interested in the idea of coming to a meeting together. And then the meeting happened, and they left optimistic about the possibility that actually something good could happen from this. And so that's sort of how long it's been, and it's always been part of the vision for Hylo. Hylo is not a single entity in a certain sense, but Hylo is a kind of ecosystem infrastructure that ties together tools of a variety of types, and that's been part of the vision since I guess I would say for about 5 years. And so I only figured out more recently who are the people that I needed to bring into the conversation, and then built the social capital in order to be able to do that. And then had people fly in from Europe, from New Zealand, from all over the world, from all over the US to sit for a couple days and talk about it. And so that was.
Do you want to screen share the article, because there's a nice photo of you? Of the group there, so that people can actually sort of conceive of who it is that's.
Yeah, I mean, my one great regret was that we didn't take a whole group photo. So this is just
it's a portion of it.
This is just a handful of people. There were about 40 people there.
40.
Yeah. Wow. So this is just a clear subset of 40. and yeah, these are some of the key people. There's a collective of software entrepreneurs and designers and community builders in New Zealand, and this is a good kind of contingent of all the Kiwis that came to the event. But by no means, there were a bunch of people from Canada and Europe and other places too.
Very exciting. So you sent me the link to the article. You actually wrote this article, and when I send the recording out to folks, which should be on this weekend, I'll send out the link to the article as well.
Cool. Yeah.
So that everybody can take a look at that, because it's very interesting.
Yeah.
So let me open it up to any questions or responses again about this particular aspect of what Edward is getting up to.
Yeah, I have a question, and this is actually based on the way how our course in the Integral MBA. So we're doing a lot of creative and playful, artful inquiries. So, and they have to do a lot with being a human, or taking a pen or marking things, and it's definitely a part of embodiment that is part of that. And this playful interaction to build and strengthen community and creating new identities and so on. I think I always find that as a very essential part of it. Now the question was what you are building right now. What is the creative component in there? Where is the artistry in there? Because arts and culture are such important components, and I'm very technology oriented, but ultimately I'm an artist. So my big inquiry ongoing is actually what role does the arts, the creative, and not the arts in terms of the established art, but we all artists, I think it's important for culture to bring this creative inquiry in. So I'm wondering how that component is present in this huge collective thinking right now.
Well, I would say we see ourselves as tool makers trying to enable resource sharing, connection, and collaboration. And the way people use these things is it's like we want to enable human flourishing. And if human flourishing to one particular individual is a very particular flavor of arts, culture, and creativity, we want our tool to work really well to help them coalesce the people and the resources that are needed in order to bring that vision into fruition. And so it's kind of like, it's a tool that's, as simple as email, for example, goes a long way to enabling human creativity and flourishing, or maybe self-destruction, depending on how many emails you get. But it's a very neutral kind of a thing. And so in some sense, anytime we enable people to express their heartfelt intentions or share their deepest gifts, inevitably, some of them will be quite extraordinary and creative. And if we can give people ways to share pictures and video and coalesce skills and resources, then we're perhaps moving towards what you're imagining.
Okay.
Yeah, I love your question, Claudia, because I'm writing about play and the arts in grassroots social change right now with a colleague, and the significance of play as the basis for our adaptability in the next few centuries of change, and really upping that, like our ability to continue to be, co-creatively adaptive, and also the way that play is a disruptive technology, right? that has to be built into everything, and often structures kind of dumb that down instead of helping it to be an essential element in the human flourishing, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like just from the nature of how you're starting in this enterprise, Edward, that is the basis of how you're all coming together too.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it works out that way. That's it. We've been doing our best. That's for sure.
So, Carmen, Tiffany, Jamie, anything else? We have about 5 more minutes. Well, 4 before we have to wrap up.
Do any of you guys imagine? Are you participants in any communities that you think could benefit from something like this? Are you able to see how it could help, or what are we missing? How could we improve?
Well, I just shared already my vision. I think a creative, artful inquiry in whatever shape and form, and it doesn't need to be something very sophisticated, but anything that helps to collect visuals, be expressive. And I think technology shouldn't be a hindrance. It's more like giving space for that. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'm thinking, for over 25 years, I've been a member of an international community called Interplay, and which is an improvisation-based community. And I was just thinking, I wonder what Interplay as a Hylo community would be like. The founders are my friends, so I need to talk to them about that. And demo Hylo if they haven't seen it.
I'd be happy. I'd be happy to support you in that if you like.
Yeah. Because they've been building their own infrastructure in various ways and using Facebook as a platform and that type of thing to try to have that resource sharing across regions and countries and domains of expertise and all of that kind of thing.
Cool.
I would also say that I work in a lot of decolonization movements.
And
when I went on to Hylo, I couldn't find for Pacific Island nations, I couldn't find like a community. So I think Hylo would work really well, especially with a lot of the different island nations who are now coming together to do the climate change work.
Yeah.
Like have become, I don't know if you've seen the stuff around the Marshallese, really making a voice at the COP21 talks, but they could totally use something like this to organize across the Pacific.
It's really interesting. Have you ever come across someone named Lindsay Sexton? Is that someone you know?
No.
So she has a community, believe it or not, called 52 Islands. And they are a Hylo community dedicated to helping these small island nations deal with the threat of climate displacement. And so believe it or not,
there is one.
There is one.
I just need the right keywords, I think.
Yeah.
Right?
However, they haven't really tried to use it. We had Lindsay basically getting intrigued, and then she didn't really invite anyone to it. So there was a kind of an intention, but it didn't land. Maybe you should work together with Lindsay to help make that go.
Yeah, I know the president of the Marshall Islands. His
great!
daughter educated here in the Bay Area. A lot
Amazing.
of those climate change activists that are now emerging from the younger generations, actually almost all of them had been educated in the Bay Area.
No kidding.
Yeah. She went to Mills.
Wow, awesome.
So,
Well, I feel really lucky to get to meet you. Is
Yeah.
your name Jamie or Tiffany? I see Tiffany down there.
Tiffany.
Oh, okay, Tiffany. I feel really lucky that we got to meet, and I would love to help facilitate any kind of generative conversations that would be occurring amongst these people, discovering how it is that they're going to come together to face this really unique kind of challenge that's emerging.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll look for you at the hub.
Yeah. You can always email me. Nika can give you my email.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Cool.
Great. Well, we're going to wrap up for tonight. So let's give Edward a little round of applause because this was just such a rich and stimulating conversation tonight.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's a real treat. I don't get to sort of express these kinds of things very often, and it's fun to have such a curious, engaged audience who has the kind of background to understand some of what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. Great. And this will be up on YouTube. I'll be sending the link out to people. And of course, Edward, if you want to share it any place, you can too,
Perfect.
so that's an option also.
Perfect.
So this is the last webinar for 2015, but our intention is that for classes next year in the Integral MBA, will be continuing to produce these kinds of webinars, and you can find them out on the Meridian University YouTube channel. We have quite a few of them from past courses also that are with fascinating people, a lot of them in the same intersection of communities and topics and that type of thing, because we're also aimed at supporting a flourishing world. And so I hope everybody has a lovely evening, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Of course. Thank you, Nika. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, Carmen, and Tiffany. It's a pleasure to meet you all.
Yes, thank you, all of you.
All right. Enjoy.
Enjoy.
Thank you.